on borough concerns, commenting on all land use matters, advocating for the borough in municipal budget processes, and appointing members of the Manhattan's 12 community boards. As borough president, she chairs the borough board made up of the city council members and chairs from the community boards, and the borough services cabinet, which is comprised of senior officials of these city agencies. Ms. Brewer previously served as city council representing the 6th council district, and as council member, she successfully passed legislation guaranteeing sick leave for most hourly workers, compelled landlords to fix repeated violations, requiring all city data be published online, and the nation's first law protecting domestic workers. She was the founding chair of the council's technology committee immediately prior to her election. Ms. Brewer served as city government in various roles, including New York City Deputy Public Advocate for Intergovernmental Affairs under Mark Green, and Director of Mayor Dinkins' federal office in New York City, managing the administrative legislative agenda in Washington, and technical assistance programs to help community-based organizations obtain federal funds, as well as Executive Director of the Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women. Ms. Brewer has an MBA from Harvard Kennedy School of Government and did her undergraduate work at Columbia University and Bennington College. She teaches a class in urban policy in the spring and has taught urban affairs at colleges including Barnard Baruch, Brooklyn, and Queens College. Today, she still teaches with Hunter College. Ms. Brewer is married to Carl Snyder, and together they have raised many foster children. That is indeed a sacrifice. It is my honor to recognize Ms. Brewer for her outstanding contributions to public service in this great city. We also applaud her continued efforts to support small business, which is the backbone of New York.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here with the Chamber and Mark. And I want to say a couple things about how much I appreciate this Chamber, because when you try to push the envelope on issues, it's often challenging. But the Chamber was the first chamber to talk about .nyc, and this is a small piece of trying to improve the support of small business with a domain that talks about New York City, and it's something that I started when I was in the City Council. And then, paid sick days, very controversial. I always say that I started it, got murdered in some instances, and then de Blasio got all the credit, just to be clear. But I want to thank the Chamber, because it is a women's issue in the sense of trying to care for family, giving people some days off who don't have it. Many of us in this room do, but I think it is very much a family women's issue and something to be celebrated during this very special month. So thank you very much, Mark. You've done a lot for all the women. So people want to know, what in the world does the borough president do? And it is challenging because it's not legislative, but it certainly includes land use, which in New York City there's only one industry: real estate, real estate, and real estate. And so we have a lot to do with that zoning process. We also appoint, and we try to appoint to the best we can to make sure that there are many women. On the community board, something very special this year, for those of you who don't know, they're like our little city halls, 12 in Manhattan, 59 in the city. And we actually passed a law that says, and some people like this and some people don't, but that 16 and 17-year-olds can serve, and we're making sure that young women are going to be on the community boards. This is a big deal, because as we talk about young people not voting, young people not participating, people are really excited at that age. And you'd be surprised, those of you who were 16 and 17 at one point, and also who know and have kids at that age, many of them can handle this zoning and other discussions that take place at the local level. And we started to appoint young women, and they're unbelievable, and they can handle their own. So we're trying to bring young women into the fold by giving them a voice on local matters. And then, of course, we also allocate a lot of capital money, as do city council members and the mayor. And we try to, again, make sure the women's organizations are part of those allocations. But last night I spoke there's a new place in town called the Civic Hall, which is a tech center over on 20th and 5th Avenue. We're actually going to have an event there Monday night with some principals and educators at 6 o'clock. Everyone is welcome. But the reason I mention it is in this city there's a lot of discussion now about STEM and figuring out how young women can be part of that discussion. Needless to say, women and women of color are not in that industry as much as we would like. 2% of the industry is people of color generally in terms of the technology in this country. So we're making a big effort, working with the Department of Education, working with the colleges to try to get more women into the STEM fields. I'm also a big supporter of STEAM, which puts arts into that world. And I think the arts and technology go together. And so in the schools, because I'm a big believer for women to get started on a path that leads to support and self-sufficiency, education, we all know, is the path. So we're trying really hard in Manhattan, and I know all of the city boroughs are trying to do the same, to think about ways that we can do that. And the governor, to his credit, passed a bond act that you probably don't remember that you voted for last year. It's hard to remember. One of those resolutions that comes at the end of, like, what in the world are all these things I'm supposed to be voting on? But one of them, and it passed, is to give more money for education and technology in the schools. So we're working hard to make that a reality. The other issue, of course, is entrepreneurship. Women are the first to be entrepreneurs in the city of New York. It's a very tough business. We just released a report on small business in the city of New York. Some of you know I'm a big supporter of small business. I know some of you may come from chains, and I apologize, but on the roots of New York, the avenues and the streets, we want to keep our small businesses and our entrepreneurs. And in order to do that, it's not easy. In order to do that, rent is an issue. Making sure that you have the loans and capital financing is an issue, particularly for women. So we just released a report that's on our website that talks about ways that we have some suggestions, and we can introduce legislation, and we're going to do that to try to think of ways of keeping what we call storefronters, which is also the same name perhaps as mom and pops, on the avenues. We want to balance. We want to balance between the chains and the mom and pops. We don't want to lose the entrepreneurial spirit that women in particular have, and absolutely makes our city interesting for tourists as well as those of us who live here. And then the other thing I just want to talk about is just the few number of women in politics. It's low. I mean, we have a speaker in the city of New York. We had a speaker before who's a woman. But it's only in the state of New York, we're 28th in terms of all of the states, in terms of the number of women. And in Congress, we're only 19.4% in the House and the Senate in terms of women. Only 11 states have ever had women either Senate or governor, so that's not a lot. And in terms of women of color, there are 104 women serving in Congress now. What a mess that place is, by the way. And 33 or 31, 32% are women of color. So the numbers are low, and we still have to work hard on voter turnout, because that's also very, very low. So I'm here to say, we're all working very, very hard to make some of these issues a reality. And as I indicate, I hope that between figuring out ways that young women can have a chance through the schools, and also how women in business would have more opportunities, and then of course more women getting elected. There's actually an editorial in the New York Times today. Andrea Stewart Cousins is the head of the Democratic side of the state Senate. And as the governor negotiates the budget, she has not been involved. And to the credit of the New York Times, because in that budget negotiation, obviously head of the state assembly, the governor, obviously, and then a gentleman who's got a sort of I call it a rump group, but that would be my term. Lou may have another one. In the state Senate, and of course head of the state Senate was Republican. But Andrea, who is head of the Democratic 25 members, is not in the room. And so we've all been having press conferences as women, stating it would be good to have a woman's voice in there. And to the credit of the New York Times, they agree with us today. It's a big deal to have the New York Times. It's Women's History Month. And I think from a political perspective, she's a lovely woman, she's a smart woman, she's a normal person in politics. There's not a lot of folks like that, to be honest with you. And she should be in the room. So, again, something to think about, and hope you read it today. I want to thank the Chamber for not just for honoring all of us and amazing people who are being honored, but for taking leadership in very quiet, nuanced ways that others don't. It's a tough town. We're the 4th largest budget in the United States. We're bigger than half of the countries in the world. $75 billion budget. And I have to say, this chamber is a leader in all of that. Thank you very, very much.